what people would, what would really work for an electric vehicle. And I had taken my speedsters up and down California, shown them everywhere, and I said, well, what we really need is an electric vehicle that will hold 1 to 4 people, travel about 100 miles on a single charge, and cost about $15,000. That would be kind of eye-opening and groundbreaking. So we created our mission statement, which is really long. But when it really got down to it, just build an electric car that would carry 1 to 4 people 100 miles on a single charge for less than $15,000. So right now we're about $16,000, but we're feeling we're going to get pretty close. And this is the vehicle. It's called Switch. It's a 3-wheel vehicle. It can have 2 passengers in the front. You can have left-hand drive, center drive, or right-hand drive. We also, I'm not sure, like I said, I spent 10 minutes on this. So this is the pickup truck model. You take out the rear seats. And Todd doesn't come with it, but Todd's our CAD guy. But we have about 600 pounds of hay on the back of that. So it works as a pickup and a utility truck. We'd have to sit in the shop like that with just a bed on the truck, and people started building things on the bed. So we always need workspace. So we have more workspace. So I had to take the bed off so people get to work when things are supposed to. But we wanted an innovative car. It's very flexible. It's 0 to 60. Well, it's not like a Tesla. It does. You'll get there. It actually does better than that, but I was trying to sneak the humor in. 0 to 60 as fast as my Porsches. It's actually pretty quick. The vehicle weighs 1,300 pounds, and we put about a 80 horsepower motor in it, so it's very, very fast. It goes about 100 miles, and it's great fun to drive.
Does it handle foul weather, like if it starts raining?
The one thing that I try to talk to people about is, don't think of it as a car, think of it as a motorcycle. If it's a motorcycle, there's a lot more there than you get with a motorcycle. If you think of it as a car, there's a few things missing. The roof, the door, the sides. But for $15,000, we had to cut a few things out.
What's the battery?
Battery's lithium. It's a lithium iron phosphate. It's in the front. It's under the black.
Cow catcher.
It's about a 20 kilowatt hour pack.
Can you drive it?
I've never pressed the point, but we only have one of them, and we have applied for our manufacturer's license. And once we get our manufacturer's license, then we apply for the federal rebate program, and we should get about $3,500 back. So you pay $15,000, you get $3,500 back, and you should be able to drive it immediately because it is an electric, a pure electric vehicle.
So you're selling it as a 4-person motorcycle or a car?
We're selling it as a motorcycle.
Yeah.
And you can put anywhere from 1 to 4 seats in it.
When you get a lot more range, you get a complete ferry all around.
Yes. Yes. One of the really cool things that we're doing is we're selling this to schools. And we did our first training. I tried to limit because I wasn't speaking, and I was, and I was, and I wasn't. And then it's 10 minutes, so I had to cut a lot of stuff out. But we just did a program where we had 6 instructors come from around the world. They've all bought the Switch. 2 of these high schools have wind tunnels. All of the instructors left the program going, wow, there's so many points that I can teach in this vehicle. And I'm an advocate of having some competitions, having classes build it, do some testing. They can test it for range and speed or whatever they want to do, but they'll put it in a wind tunnel and they're going to design front ends to make it more efficient and keep records over time. And it's exciting to me to see what they're actually doing. And these guys, we had one guy that was if you sell to education, a lot of times you find that the administration is really bullish on an idea, but the instructor not so much. So the instructor was I'll be right there. The instructor was a heavy, big block guy. He wanted horsepower and smell and tires burning. He came to the class and he wasn't really convinced that he wanted to build an electric car. His bought the program. Well, by the time he was really, I mean, I could have brought some video from the class. He was one of our strongest guys. He was really excited. We actually build the car in a week. So we get all the teachers there, we have all the parts, and we actually build a vehicle so we overcome the fear of trepidation of electrical vehicles. We built a 72-volt car, so it's not quite as intimidating. But he was really psyched about it, and we've heard from him since, and we're excited about it. So, yes, sir.
My question is, I've seen a lot of three-wheeler vehicles coming out, motorcycles going out, and motorcycles, I guess, but a lot of the criticism has been their instability, that they're not very stable, that they're not really safe. How do you deal with that?
Well, ours is extremely stable. The main problem with them, and how many of you were at Stanford? I think just Max and I were there and Sven. But there was another EV there, and the front end was about this wide. Our front end is wide, is almost as wide as my pickup. So I've got video of us doing donuts. We've got fast turns where we're sliding. It's really, I feel, really well engineered. It's not my part. My partner Jim does the engineering, but we have a really wide front end.
You have most of the weight in the front, is that right back?
We actually have, it's 33% on each wheel. So it's really well balanced that way. The other thing that we're doing that's a little bit unique that Max brought up is we really want to have a distributed manufacturing model. Our company is a common good company. How many people know about common good companies? Common good companies, in short, have three bottom lines. As a C Corp, with shareholders, you're required to make as much money as possible. If you make decisions as a standard company that might not make you the most money, but is maybe kind of good, shareholders can sue you as a board member. Common good companies have three bottom lines. We have to make money, but we have to be, we're evaluated on our environmental footprint, and we're also audited on our social impact. So common good companies have three bottom lines. It's a triple bottom line: money, profit. Everybody has to have profit. The second is environmental impact, and the third is social good.
So this isn't a benefit corporation?
It's a benefit corp, really.
Oh, so it is a benefit corp?
In California, they've just passed the benefit corp law.
Right. So where are you incorporated?
In California.
So this is common good company is something, and are you talking about benefit corps, or?
I'm sorry?
Are you talking about a benefit corporation, or?
It's really a benefit. In California, they're called benefit. They started back east and they were called common good.
Okay.
We chose the common good name, but maybe people are more familiar with benefit corp. So we're a common good company. We want to have a distributed model. So instead of all the parts being shipped to Sebastopol, we make the vehicle and then we ship the vehicles out. We actually want to have distributed manufacturing. I said that we had 6 instructors come to our facility and learn how to make the vehicle. We can teach a fairly uneducated labor force how to make this vehicle, and it takes about 4.5 hours. So it's pretty quick. Everything is prefabricated and cut. They just have to hook the wires up, bolt the pieces on. The other thing that we're doing that's a little bit different is the iPhone concept, where people can make, as some people think there might be some pieces missing. So we want to have our partners build bodies, build tops. We have a carpenter, wood craftsman that's building a storage area in the back. That'll come up and rise up over those seats and be a really nice cargo area. So we're going to help sell those and help other businesses that are going to build the options. We're going to strictly make the vehicle.
So do you have some kind of the equivalent of a developer program?
We do, yeah. It's. Remember when we talked about innovation, I talked about openness? So we're pretty wide open. We feel like, well, particularly in my case, my mission is to get as many electric vehicles on the road as I can get on the road. I'm 60 years old, I got some time left, but I don't want to spend 10 years developing this thing. We've spent 3. I want to get vehicles on the road. So we're going to try to help as many businesses as we can and license the technology.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if I heard you before. Are you going to be developing a way of encompassing of
Yes.
the canopy?
Right, yes.
Is it going to look more like a car or more like a motorcycle, which is a fairing, a large fairing?
We've had a lot of creative ideas, and Max was the first one that's brought up the Gina, but one of the things that I really liked when we started this 3 years ago was we saw the video on the BMW Gina. You can search on that. It's the coolest thing. It's a fabric. It talks about instead of just having a metal frame around the vehicle, you have a fabric. It's water resistant. You can actually put hydraulic lifters in and change the shape of the car as you go. The lights are behind the fabric, so when the brake lights come on, there's nothing there but then there's 2 red spots. Look for BMW Gina. It's really cool. We want to have something along those lines.
So is there clear parts of it in the
No, it's just look. It's just amazing.
It has to be seen, just G-I-N-A.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is. It really is. And then the headlights. The headlights too. It kind of opens up like an eyebrow. It's the very end. It kind of winks at you. You got to watch it. There's a lot of videos on it, but we want something like that. We are just barely getting started, and we're getting so much creative input. So we're excited, and we want to support that as much as we can. I do have business cards. If anybody's interested in coming in to school, we'll be glad to show you around our facility and let you get involved as much as you want. I think we're going to sit around and ask questions afterwards. So
How much cargo can you carry?
About 600 pounds. Yeah.
Including the driver, that's like everything?
Well, that was we haven't really done the testing yet. The frame is the same frame that they use in NASCAR to make roll cages, so the problem isn't the roll cage or the frame, it's the suspension. If you wanted to carry more, we'd probably put a little better shocks on the back. We had, on our standard model, it was 600 pounds of hay, a driver and a guy standing there waving an American flag because we were in a parade. And it was fine, and then it took off and still did some burnouts, and I didn't participate in that because exhibitions of speed are illegal. But they all had a good time.
How fast does it go with the 72 volt?
Well, those are built for high school, and they'll still go 40 miles an hour. Mostly it's the motor and controller. We put a 400 amp controller with like a 6-inch motor in it instead of an 8-inch. This one has a 9-inch DC motor. I'm working on one for myself, which will have an AC motor. Instead of being able to go 2,800 RPM, it'll go 8,000 RPM, and it'll have a belt drive, so it'll be really quiet. And that car will, the performance in that car will be really outstanding.
Are we going 80 miles an hour?
Well, I do that in my speedsters, and they weigh 1,000 pounds more. So it's also, a function of gearing. We have direct drive, so we can hit it for high speed or burnout, whatever you want. And we would counsel people to, if you're going to have a commute car where you're going to travel on the freeway, let's get you in the most efficient range for that motor. If you're going to drive around town, you maybe want a little more low-end torque and a little different gearing. Arlen, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I was just trying to.
People are starting to fall asleep and text, so I'm going to say.
No, it's very interesting.
I want to thank Howard for all the things that Howard does, and I want to thank Max.
Thanks for coming out and competing with the presidential debate. That's
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Here we go. There we go.
So how much do you sell these things for?
Right now,
Ready?
it's
Yeah,
about
so thank you very much, Peter, for talking about that. There's a plethora of things that he just literally didn't have the time to explain, but I really find what they're doing is very innovative. Not just the car itself, but also the business model in there. So we'll see what we can do to get them to succeed. So our next speaker is Brad Templeton. He's are you director at the EFF, or he's the director at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, who's out there fighting for your rights out there on the old internet. And I know him actually from the nanotechnology world, from the Foresight Institute for Molecular Nanotechnology, and he's by far the best heckler I've ever met.
It's really
And I guess
we're
you
pushing
used to
pretty
be
hard
used
right now
to
to get the price down.
do the Oct3 humor, was it?
We're capitalized.
Something like that, okay. So anyway, Brad is going to sort of paint a vision of robocars,
We're still buying.
and he's going to
Instead of a-
really, hopefully open up your eyes to what the possibilities really can be in the future, in a very, very near future.
And I have different answers for everything that Sven was asked about, so that's cool too. But yeah, no, we can be a bit interactive. If I'm not careful, this talk goes for an hour and a half, so we'll try and do the 15-minute version and give you a taste of where I think the world is going and why cars that drive themselves are really going to be a much more transformative technology than people think. I mean, everyone thinks it's pretty cool, but there's really a lot going to go on when it turns out that software and cars get married, because they haven't been. Transportation has been a very slowly progressing technology. Things double every 100 years maybe, and computers just aren't that way. So in particular, there are 5 areas of big change that I see. I'll give you a little bit about each one. The first one is simply saving lives. That could be enough. I could end my talk with that, but I'm also going to talk about huge changes to energy and also to electric cars. I'll also talk about what happens in cities when we change how parking works, and we change how traffic works, and finally a bit about delivery. And I'm going to give you some tastes of where things are going and why it's becoming real. So as I said, the most important one is saving lives, and it's because human drivers turn out to be really pretty bad drivers. It's not a high bar maybe to get better than them. In fact, human drivers are killing, with their steering wheels, 34,000 people every year in the United States, about 1.2 million people around the world every year. It's the 3rd largest cause of years of life loss. We also have 50 million injuries. We have 12 million accidents. And the National Highway Transportation Safety Agency actually came up with a very interesting number about 5 or 6 years ago. That accidents in the U.S. were costing $230 billion, about 2.5% of the GDP. What was interesting was they laid that out in terms of cost per mile. It was about 8 cents a mile, and this is not true anymore today, but back then, that was more than a lot of people paid for gasoline. Think about the fact that your share of the cost of car accidents is greater than the cost of your insurance or your gasoline or all these other things that you think are the expensive part of the car. Pretty amazing. We also spend 50 billion hours as a country, 50 billion hours every year doing this highly productive, highly skilled activity. I apologize to professional drivers in the room, but that's what we spend 50 billion hours doing. And that, I think, is another 8% of GDP, a hidden part. Now, 40% of those fatalities come from drinking alcohol, and robots, frankly, don't drink that much yet. That's because they haven't really learned what life is like, but for now, they don't drink that much. And 80% of those accidents are due to something else robots don't have, which is inattention. They're going to make other mistakes, but the accidents we have today are caused by things that software is actually pretty good at. We lose 41 hours of our lives every year to congestion, and we've given over a whole chunk of our world to cars. So there are 3, some people even say 8 parking spaces for every car in America. And somebody estimated for LA, not exactly the poster child of great land use, but nonetheless that LA had 60% of its land devoted to the car somehow. Driveways, parkways, garages, parking lots, all of these things were devoted to the car. So much of our life. We also give 25% of our energy. Anyone heard about energy? It's kind of important. 1/4 of that is going into transportation on the roads, cars and trucks, and about 1/4 of the CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas emissions that come out, all thanks to our friends the cars. So this is changing because this is no longer something out of science fiction. We got asked about the Jetsons flying car, which is still in science fiction right now, people are working on it. But this is not in science fiction anymore. This is because, unlike what some people thought, it doesn't require, AI, a computer that's as smart as a human that can think. If you think about it, maybe it's something as smart as a horse. Some people would even say just something as smart as a bug, because that's all it takes to go down the road and not hit things. So this is not this sort of AI that you were thinking was decades and decades in the future. It's something much closer. I sometimes, will call it artificial horse intelligence. So what's happening is things are actually being innovated in the garage. This is so weird, right? Every software lab likes to say, we're in a garage. We really have a garage when we're building these things, even though we're working on software. So let's watch a little video of why this came about. It started actually when the military decided to hold some contests for getting self-driving vehicles. They wanted delivery vehicles. They had asked their military contractors to build them. The contractors built them huge piles of money, delivered nothing, of course. I can't believe that would happen. So they said instead, let's have contests and let's get ordinary guys teams of people to sit down and make it. The first contest was a complete failure. Nobody got more than 7 miles. All sorts of weird, funny-looking vehicles were in it. There's a friend of mine, Anthony, who works with our team, who we had the military-sized vehicles, and he forgot to turn the stabilizer on. You thought he could do a motorcycle. But the second contest, just a couple of years later, had 5 different cars complete a course through the desert of 150 miles, going down dirt roads. This is Stanley, the car from Stanford, that was the winner. Taking yourself down mountain ravines. There's nobody in the car in front. There's a chase car behind it. And Stanley there is going up to the finish line in that contest. Well, Google decided to hire the people who built this car and the winner of the contest that came 2 years later for urban street driving to build the next generation. Here's Chris in that car. Let me take the mouse away. Push the button, driving. Here we are down the streets of Palo Alto, dealing with all the usual things on street, stopping at stop signs, making left turns, avoiding pedestrians. I'd like to thank these people, by the way, for participating in our research. No, we didn't actually put them in danger. We have trained safety drivers. The car sees in 360 degrees, all directions, all the time, never blinking. And that's why it sees differently from a human and drives differently from a human. We've taken it down the streets of San Francisco and all the weird things you'll see there, stopping at traffic lights, and people turning left, people jogging in front of it as you go to a stop sign. The car has gone through the toll gates on the Golden Gate Bridge. It's gone all the way down to Los Angeles, including through Cannery Row here in Monterey. Most people recognize that. This is a little sped up. Some of it's taking it down windy mountain roads, past things that frankly scare me when I'm driving up there. Sees the same day and night because the way the sensors work is not seeing with a camera, seeing with a laser. And in San Francisco, we couldn't resist, had to take it down the windiest street in the world there, Lombard Street. And that is sped up a little bit. I don't recommend going down Lombard Street at the speed of the camera here. So we've also taken the car to merge onto a highway, which is a little bit tricky. And the guys at Stanford also did a cute thing, teaching the car how to park in a way I don't recommend you actually park. So that was actually a couple years ago. I don't know if we have time or whether we'll play it. But anyway, this is not just what you see in this lab or from Google's research labs. This is coming from car manufacturers. And Sam was talking about all the manufacturers he's working with at Stanford who are all trying to build this. You can buy today cars that self-park, that lane keep, warn you when you're drifting out of the lanes, do cruise control, detect pedestrians, stop you when you're about to hit something. So I was in a little car Volvo made yesterday, and we just drove right up to some cones, and we didn't have to hit the brakes. The car hit the brakes for it. This is stuff you can already buy in the market today. But even more is coming. We got Mercedes has announced. I think they pulled back on this one, probably next year now. But they'll have a car with a slow autopilot for traffic jams. Volkswagen has said the same thing, except even faster. They'll have around 2016. All the companies have done concept cars and demonstrations. GM and Nissan and Toyota. Everyone's done this. Cadillac has said in 2015 they'll have a Super Cruise. Now that's a car that will just drive down the highway lane. You still have to pay attention to it, but again, it's a baby step in that direction. So all that stuff is announced from the car companies. We don't have sound on this one here. Where's that little microphone? This is where we sit. Actually, this is about half a year ago. Hang on. I didn't know where my speaker is either. Oh, switch is a good idea. So did you see, Steve, he pushed the buttons to auto driving.
Well, I drive all the time anyway.
So we're here at the stop sign. Trying to use the radar and the laser to check and make sure there's nothing coming your way. That's why myself. Well, that is very hard, man. They don't die. Anybody up for a taco? Yeah. What do you want to do today? I'm all. All right, well, go get a taco at the drive-thru. Yeah, we're trying to get to the parking lot. Ow. Joe, there's people on here. Does anyone have any money? I've got one. Now I've got my wallet right here. You roll down your window and order a burrito. Yes, I do. Doing very well. How are you today? This is some of the best driving I've ever done. 95% of my
reality in life, everything takes you much longer. There are some places that you cannot go. There are some things that you really cannot do. Where this will change my life is to give me the independence and the flexibility to go the places I both want to go and need to go when I need to do those things.
So Steve was indeed the first civilian to get serious use of the car, and as you noticed, he's head of the Santa Clara Valley Blind Center and can't see. So these vehicles will also have the potential to bring mobility back to a huge raft of people who have lost it, either through the accident that blinded him or through just getting old, frankly, which is going to deprive some of you of that ability as time goes on. So this is a way for programmers and innovators to save the world. I'll give you a little bit of technology rundown. In this particular case, the magic is mostly coming from the sensor you see on the roof. This is called a LiDAR. That's a laser rangefinder. It spins around 10 times every second. Sees 360 degrees. Here's a little brief video of how it sees, and also our perception system identifying all the other objects on the road, the other vehicles, the cars parked on the side of the road, from what we call a point cloud that comes out of it. So, as I said, doesn't see like a human and doesn't drive like a human. And so if you didn't think this technology was coming, it's probably because you thought it would have to solve all the problems that humans solve. And that's not the case. Also in the car is a radar at the front, and that can see even further in the forward direction, tell the speed of things. A GPS antenna on the back, which is actually used only the way you use a GPS, to roughly figure out where you are. It does not drive from the GPS. That would be crazy. And a few other tricks. So what does it mean to have something like this? What does it mean to have mobility on demand? The idea that you might pick up a cell phone and say, I need to go downtown, and that within a very short amount of time, 30 seconds, a minute, some short amount of time, a vehicle rolled up to you. It wasn't like the car you drive today. It had a pleasant work environment maybe, or if there was two of you, you were sitting face to face and having a discussion. And all this happened with no central control and no new infrastructure, no changes to the infrastructure, no radios between the cars, no transmissions from the traffic lights, nothing, no electrified road, all the same roads that we have today. What would that mean for society? So let's talk about energy first of all. Now, I think what's cool is that if you really imagine a world like that where people summon vehicles with their phone, you have the potential to travel not in the same car you always go in, but in the right vehicle for the trip. Because what are most trips that people take? How many people are in the car? All right. Okay, I'm giving you a big hint. One person's typically in the car. With actually, average car has 1.5 people in it. I guess there's someone chopped up in the trunk. Most of the cars I see have just one person in them. And they're mostly just trips across town. Yeah, sometimes you drive to Lake Tahoe, sometimes you go skiing, sometimes you have cargo, sometimes you take 12 kids to soccer practice. But most of the time, one car. Well, what if you could go in the right vehicle for the trip so that when you are going to soccer practice with 12 kids, a van is what you have. When you are going to Lake Tahoe, an SUV is what you have. But when you're going across town, you're driving in a small car that's as efficient or more efficient than the electric vehicle we just saw. Right? That means suddenly that we can move driving to be in the right vehicle for the trip. You might not own a car at all. You might own a car and hire it out, or have it hire itself out. It's going to be doing that on its own while you're not using it. This actually is remarkable. When I started looking at the energy requirements, his car is about 200 watt-hours per mile. It's actually possible to build cars that go down below 100 watt-hours per mile when they're for a single person and don't go on the highway and stuff like that. That turns out to be more efficient, not just in the cars we have today, but actually more efficient than any of the transit systems in the United States. There's going to be a day coming when people say, well, why don't I ride the bus? Oh, I can't. It's way too energy inefficient. It's going to burn too much fuel if I ride the bus. I'd much rather use my own vehicle. Very different from the way people think today. So I have a lot more stuff on that, some charts on that I won't give you, but I will tell you that I think this has the ability to enable things like the electric car, and not just the electric car, but actually all sorts of different ways of doing vehicles and doing fuels. So we've known how to make a short-range electric vehicle like yours for a long time. People actually built vehicles like that, not exactly like that, but a little bit like that a century ago. Right? They did lead acid, they didn't have lithium, there's a few other things. They're different. They didn't know as much about aerodynamics. But we've known how to build that. We haven't known, unfortunately, how to get a lot of people to use them. Right? And that's because they're a little paranoid about the range, they're paranoid about the life of the battery, they're paranoid about the time to recharge, all other things. If we can give people a way so that they don't care about the range of a taxi, and cars don't care about how long it takes to recharge. Because robots don't care about anything, really. That's the great thing about them. Right? They don't care how convenient it is to refuel or recharge. They don't care about waiting. They don't park. What they do is actually legally called standing. Suddenly you can have alternative fuels because you don't need to beat gasoline's 100-year head start. Gasoline has been out there for 100 years as a station. There used to be a station on every corner. They actually tore a lot of them down. But there's huh?
They're not Starbucks.
There's Starbucks in every corner, which is a different kind of fuel. So I believe that if you actually have a car that can deliver itself, suddenly you will have alternative fuel cars and electric cars for a lot of our trips. And that means we can save the electric car. I've predicted, with full deployment of this, removing 200 million tons every year of CO2. And for the United States to no longer import oil for overseas. Now think of that for a minute. Software, meaning the United States doesn't have to import oil from overseas. That's a pretty dramatic thing to think of software to do. So there's been a bunch of policy stuff going on. I actually got to update this slide. Last week we had some changes. Mostly, I used to talk about how hard it was going to be to get governments to accept this. It's been completely the reverse. So this is a picture of a license plate that Google got in Nevada, the first autonomous car testing license plate, because Nevada passed a law. As you probably know, I hope you all saw this news story, Governor Brown signed California's own law enabling this technology on Tuesday, last week. And so now they'll be able to have these cars in California as well. So and we're going to see forces lobbying for them. People with kids are going to want to have their lives back, frankly. Drunks may want to get wasted and not have to worry about hitting someone on the way home, and I think that'll be good. And as I often point out, I think Jews will lobby for it, but mostly because there's nothing the Jews are going to love more than arguing about whether it's legal to ride in this car on Saturday or not. There's a few Jews in the audience giggling about that. There is a certain enjoyment in arguing about the law. So there are also, however, nothing's perfect. There can be some downsides from this. We could see the Wall-E world where everyone looks like me. We could see people taking longer trips rather than more efficient trips. I'd even imagine, instead of the lovely green vehicles we were just talking about, I might sometimes want a robo-RV. And when I say an RV, I say, well, why should I have just one? Why don't I get a fleet of 5 of them to follow me everywhere I go and then dock and form a house for me? Right? It's possible. It's expensive. It's not green at all, but there's people who could afford that and might very well do it. Every technology can go both ways. We may see lovely, denser urban spaces because they don't need to have all the parking anymore, or we may see super sprawl because everyone figures I can get everywhere from here and I can put my kids in one day. So we can see the world go either way. But it's happening whether we like the good or the bad. We can push it towards having more of the good. There are a lot of risks. There's the risk of computer intrusion and bugs and so on. The military, of course, wants to take this technology and build killer robots. I'm not keen on that, but that sort of thing is going to happen. We're going to see possible invasions of privacy. If we move to a world where we're always taking taxis, it's likely that everywhere we go is going to be recorded, be available. I don't want my car to betray me. We're going to have to work to avoid that from happening. We'll get a few benefits to our freedom. We'll get some people trying to take our freedom away and saying the police should be able to order your car to come back to the police station. How many of you saw Minority Report, the Tom Cruise movie? Did you see that movie? So that's a movie, like, it pretends to be about psychics predicting crimes and stuff. It's really about self-driving cars. And it's got the scene where Tom Cruise is in the car, and suddenly the car, he's talking, and he's upset, he's just been framed for a murder he hasn't even committed yet. And he says, talking, and suddenly the car says, you have a new destination. The new destination is your office, which I think is kind of cute, because a really well-designed car would actually say that. His office is the police station, so it's really trying to take him to jail. But the point is, would you like your car to obey you, or would you want to obey the police? It's an interesting question. We also have some other aspects where we might increase our freedom. But there's also going to be some barriers to getting this deployed. So one of the biggest problems is that people don't like being killed by robots. Now, it's funny that people are that way, but because what I really mean is that people are more afraid of being killed by robots, and of course we should be afraid of being killed by robots, but people are more afraid of that than we are of being killed by drunks, right? Which is what's killing us now in very large numbers. Careless drivers and drunks are killing more people every month than died in the World Trade Center, more people in the history of the U.S. than have died in all the wars in the history of the United States. have been killed by the careless drivers and the drunks and so on. And yet we're more afraid of being killed by robots. Now the truth is, as hard as everyone is working to make this to be a very safe technology and have a great safety record, and everyone is working on that, they will not be perfect. There will be accidents at some point. Everyone would like to think not, but that's how the world works. And if the liability system decides that when that happens, that there should be high punitive damages, it could be the technology would be killed by that fear. So that's one of the things we have to worry about. There are going to be regulators who will not be as positively minded about this as the California, Nevada, and Florida regulators have been. There'll be people worried about terrorists using this and sending bombs to places. There'll be people who want to ban it for that reason. And there is, of course, the small matter of programming it. So this is exciting, though, because we're going to see, as I mentioned at the very beginning, Moore's Law coming to transportation. We're going to see a world where innovation in transportation is done with competing innovators, the way the internet grew. Lots of companies competing, trying to build things, rather than the 19th century approaches by which transportation was designed in the past. We're going to see decisions being made by early adopters. Now, early adopters basically are stupid people with too much money, right? And they will buy the 4 of something, and 6 months later they'll buy the 4S, and then 6 months later they'll buy the 5 because they have to have that latest thing, even though it's absolutely crazy from a financial standpoint to spend that much money on your phone. But these people are great because they do want to be in the cutting edge. They do drive these new technologies. So that's going to be pretty cool. That's going to, instead of having transportation bought by municipal administrators, who, let's face it, are not early adopters. Any municipal administrators here? Okay, good. Yeah, they suck at that. Okay. But that's not the way that small, if you can go down to Fry's and buy it, that's where it suddenly grows at internet speed. Briefly, I'll talk about parking, because we did that come up. I think this is really interesting because since the cars don't have to park, they would do what's called standing. They can pack themselves, even in existing parking lots, 3 times more densely than current cars do, and they can even double park them and triple park themselves on the sides of the streets when the streets are not that busy, and so you need a lot of parking because the streets aren't busy. And that allows you to get by with far less parking than we have today, which means that, my dream